we'll get to the election later. Let's talk about this week first. First thing we got to say, if you're starting to watch this, let's say on the 9th and 10th, on the weekend before the 11th, then we have a different vibe. We have two distinct vibes this week. Three, if you can count the weekend before. So on the weekend of the 9th and the 10th, we have the Aquarius moon, and it's the first quarter moon. So we're looking at an active period of time. Aquarius moon favors social gatherings with friends. And we also have Venus at the very last degrees of Sagittarius, where she favors outgoing activities and fun, square to Neptune in Pisces, her favorite sign. I would say this is being a kind of, flights of fantasy kind of placement. It could be a good time to, indulge in music and art. It would be a great time for creative projects. It would be fun, just fun to get out. It's just fun to get out. It's the kind of, go for a ride type of thing. Overindulgence is a little bit of a possibility with Venus square Neptune. And perhaps for those of you who feel like you have to do early holiday shopping, perhaps you could overspend as well. Venus in Sagittarius doesn't really like the boundaries all that much, and Neptune, all about dissolving boundaries. So, you could go a little too far with things, whether it is fun, spending, whatever it is. You could go a little bit too far with things this weekend. That's about the only thing that you'd have to say about it that looks like it could be a bit of a problem. Otherwise, all things considered, that's a pretty good energy. Later on in the weekend, the moon goes into Pisces. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually supporting Venus and Neptune. So, an okay weekend, all else being equal, which it ain't, but okay. Then we get into the week of the 11th. Now, here we've got a very Saturnian vibe to begin the week. First of all, Saturn Capricorn, right? First of all, it's Pluto's last week in Capricorn, its last full week in Capricorn. Next week, he goes into Aquarius. We'll talk about that next week. But this is his last full week in Capricorn. And then he is going to go on to Aquarius the very last minutes of Capricorn. So we're feeling that Capricorn energy extra strongly. We begin the week with Mercury square to Saturn. Mercury square to Saturn, there are, it's, you got to choose your words carefully. It's a poor time to ask for favors from folks in authority. It is a good time to be very specific about anything that you need to get across to people in authority. You're going to want to really dot your I's and cross your T's. You don't want to just be loose with things. Now, Mercury is actually in Sagittarius and Saturn is in Pisces, which potentially means that folks will be playing a little bit loose with things. Beliefs may be a little bit more important than facts, and we might find it easy to revise a story and make it better, make it, sort of a better selling story or something like that. And yet Saturn is still likely to, call you to task for things, particularly because Saturn is stationing on Friday the 15th. And when Saturn stations, we really feel that heaviness and that sense of responsibility. It's a time to really, shoulder the burden, put your shoulder to the wheel, lots of shoulder stuff. There's a lot of work to be done. It's, it is a waxing moon all week through the sign of Aries and eventually into Taurus, Pisces, Aries, Taurus. Saturn tends to slow things down. The waxing moon, will help move things along a little bit. Generally speaking, you want to take the bulk of this week and it's got to work, got to be responsible, got to do what needs to be done. That's the flavor of the week. And right there on Friday on Saturn station, we can look at it and say, okay, this is going to be a time when we have a lot to do, a lot of work and responsibilities. We're not making much progress. Saturn gives you the two things. He gives you the tasks to do, and then he gives you delays and slows down your progress at doing it. It's not really great. It's not, well, it's not great. Let's just leave it at that. But the the responsible thing to do, the best thing to do when it comes to Saturn is go right ahead and follow along and do what needs to be done, even if you're not making much progress. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the Saturn station is very, very strong. And so you want to really be aware of it during those times, right? You're going to feel it all week long. It's going to be very strong Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Take care of yourself. As much as you're supposed to work and be responsible and shoulder the burden and all that, you're also going to have to take care of yourself. Saturn can sort of like push down our vitality a little bit. And so sometimes you see like little colds and minor things go around in the sign of Pisces. It might be more like well, I'm thinking it would be more. Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Why speculate? If you take care of yourself, you won't get it, hopefully. So, we don't have to worry about what form the minor illness comes in. But you do want to take care of yourself. You want to make sure you get enough rest, even as you do enough work. Do enough work, get enough rest. You'll be fine. Now, Saturn station, this heavy, kind of down energy, comes at the full moon. And this full moon is in Taurus. And it is very, very close to the planet Uranus, the planet of sudden changes and revolutions. And it's a full moon, which tends to blow things up anyway. And so we have a completely contrasting energy to the Saturn station. The full moon conjunct Uranus, the sun goes on to oppose Uranus just a day later. Revolutionary change kind of energy, break out, be free. Full moon, lunacy. Saturn says, got to work late on Friday. Full moon says, let's go out and play. You got to balance it out. I'm telling you that you get, the winds are blowing in two completely different directions. And that's what you have to deal with. You have to figure out how to balance this out. Certainly, certainly Saturday would seem to be a fun night. But you still have that Saturnian energy around for a good part of Saturday. So just when you'd like to really go have some fun, it's like, oh, geez, but the garage really needs to be cleaned out. Maybe you're reminding yourself the garage needs to be cleaned out. Maybe somebody else is reminding you, or maybe you're reminding somebody else that the garage needs to be cleaned out. The attic, the kitchen, oh, the kitchen cabinet. Really have to take care of that spice cabinet at some point in time. It's just every time I do it, it winds up getting to be a mess again. Anyways, that's the vibe now. Right? So we have the two contrasting energies at the weekend. Right? As we build towards the excitement, the energy, the freedom of the full moon, we have Saturn weighting us down. Perhaps you could use Saturn as like the keel to your ship. You're really sailing far and fast, but Saturn's keeping you a little bit grounded. I try. I'm working here for you. I'm coming up with something that might work. Then, as we get to the back half of the weekend, we have Mercury opposite Jupiter. This is another thing that is all over the weekend. Now, Mercury opposite Jupiter, saying too much, and it's the full moon. Brings things up, brings things to light, gets you to bring stuff out. Be very, very aware of that tendency to say too much. Mercury opposite Jupiter is, it's a recipe, and It's not thinking too much, it's talking too much because it's an opposition. We're likely to play this out with others. And of course, at the full moon, at the Saturn station, Uranus, blah, 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 Mercury opposite Jupiter, people will be driving like maniacs, and be careful. Um, the mitigating circumstance that we have here is that Mercury is in Jupiter's sign of Sagittarius, and Jupiter is in Mercury's sign of Gemini. And so they're in mutual reception. And so what would be a kind of recipe for disaster. That's not a recipe for disaster, but it might be a little bit tenser kind of aspect, is definitely mellowed a little bit by the fact that they're in each other's signs. So, and neither one is really crazy about the sign that they're in. Mercury in Sagittarius, a little too likely to give opinions and beliefs. Jupiter in Gemini, a little too likely to dig into the details or deal with, fail to see the big picture. Kind of work it out over here. Anyway, on a practical level, it means, things might get a little bit heated in the discussion area, or we might say too much, we might let something out or something, but it probably won't go too badly. We'll probably find some manner of way to smooth things out, or at least, maybe you say too much. Maybe you do blurt out something. Maybe, but you kind of make it into a funny or something like that. We have to do something. Okay, now for the election recap. This is the last time I'm going to, well, it's probably not the last time I'm going to be talking about it. It's the last time I'm going to make it a central focus of the forecast. Well, that didn't go so well from my perspective. I was not terribly surprised. I was not terribly surprised at all. You should never undersell somebody whose name means triumph. To play a trump card. To triumph. That's what his name means. And as I was pointing out last week, Regulus in Leo at the 29th degree rising. This is an extraordinarily powerful chart and one that really resonates with folks. Obviously, really resonates with folks. So there we have it. I think it was Hunter Thompson who said, in a democracy, people generally get the government that they deserve. And there you go. There you go. I think anger and fear won out. And it's very, very discouraging to see that. It would, if it was a matter of policy alone, you agree, you disagree, you think this is a good idea and so on. But it was the anger. It was the anger, the fear that won out. And I think that's, terribly, terribly discouraging. I think if we look at the Democrats, we would say that they probably tapped in too early to Aquarian energy. I was talking about the energy of the Aquarian vibe that is really, defining these decades. And I think that what happened was that they tapped into the first iteration of that, particularly in 2021, late 2020, 2021 into 2022, with the Saturn Jupiter conjunction at 0 Aquarius, and then Pluto going 0, 1 degrees of Aquarius. They were getting the first sense of what Pluto in Aquarius might mean, or what the Aquarian vibe in general, because not just Pluto in Aquarius. And when a planet, or when you have some sort of planetary configuration in a sign, it's very, very typical that the first thing that you see, the sort of the flagship issue, is a good indication of the kind of thing to come. But the issue itself doesn't usually catch all that well. I've seen some exceptions to that. For example, when Uranus and Taurus have seen the presence of Bitcoin pretty much stay around throughout the entire period of time that Uranus has been in Taurus. So it's an exception to the rule. But generally speaking, when something starts astrologically, we get like a fanfare issue, but it doesn't last that long. And I think that that's what happened with the Democrats. I think that they got themselves tied up in a bunch of issues that really didn't sell all that well in 2024, as popular as they may have been or seemed to be. I don't even know that they were that popular in 21, 22. Anyway, that's that. As for the Republicans, they've painted themselves into quite a corner. Now they've also tapped into the Aquarian energy, and they have done it in a way that um, I think that they're not going to be very happy about it. And the reason for that is that they have essentially created a monster that they have no control over. And I don't mean Donald Trump, although I mean his followers. You see, what's happened is his followers have gained such power. And of course, he's the figurehead at the top of that pyramid. And yet that pyramid is there and they have no control over it. And this is going to be a bit of a problem. What do I mean by that? Well, here's an example. Tariffs. Now, Trump is promising tariffs. Now, Republicans, being the party of big business, don't like tariffs as a general rule. Right? But now Trump has yeah, Trump has promised it, and this is part of what, and people in his position don't go back on what they promised. They maybe not do it, but they don't retreat. And how are they going to stop this? I saw Mitch McConnell talking, and he was just sort of sheepishly looking down, going, "Well, I don't like tariffs very much in general." You can't. How are you going to stand up to it? Can't really stand up to the wave. That's the thing. Um, you know, Trump he's always talking favorably about Putin, and he's also backing out of NATO. Well, Republicans that remember, let's say, Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, to say nothing about Dwight Eisenhower, or if they remember, or if they are well read enough to know about, would be deeply troubled by that position. And yet, what are they going to say? What are they going to do? They've created a monster, right? They got the power. They got the power, but they can't control it, right? They've got the big giant, but they don't have the control thing to work it. And that's going to be a bit of a problem for them. The Aquarian energy is the power of the masses. It is the power of the people. And that plays out on both sides of the political spectrum. And I've said it before, I will say it again. Pluto does not pick parties. And the Republicans are sort of stuck in that quagmire. And I don't think it's particularly a good place for them to be. I misspoke last week. I said that Donald Trump has no heart. Sometimes I go off script because I'm, going off script. What I meant to say was he has no love in his heart. Not that he has no heart. He has no love in it. And he he tapped into the Neptune and Pisces energy, the flood of immigrants, right? That was, and that was something that he recognized as being, that was his main focus then. It was not so much about draining the swamp. That worked really well in 2016. But I think we have to recognize that, there's no aberration here. He's won 2 elections and did a pretty good run at the third. I mean, let's face it, he does represent slightly more than half of America. And we can't look at it as being, he's somehow or another not what America's about. He is. He is. And his followers are. And so we are we are dealing with We will get no such thing as a kinder, gentler America. That seems quite apparent. We've really kind of unleashed the beast. I think of the words of Pogo, Walter Riley's old cartoon. Uh, Pogo, we have met the enemy, and he is us.